The bulldozers arrived before the paperwork had even settled. Reporters laughed as cameras rolled, workers shook their heads, and the city's richest CEO smirked while handing over the rusted keys to a forgotten airport that everyone called worthless. The cracked runway was covered in weeds, abandoned hangars echoed with silence, and every expert agreed on one thing: the single father who had just paid exactly $1,234 for the dead property had thrown away the last of his savings. Yet 6 months later, the same people who laughed stood speechless as helicopters landed where weeds had once grown, investors fought for meetings, and an empire rose from the place everyone had buried years before. If you believe kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances can change a life, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, and subscribe to our channel so our community can continue bringing you inspiring stories that remind us never to give up. Graham Mercer had never imagined that life would reduce him to counting every dollar before buying groceries. 3 years earlier he had been a respected aviation maintenance engineer with dreams of opening his own aircraft repair company. Those dreams collapsed the day his wife, Claire, passed away after a sudden illness, leaving him alone to raise their 8-year-old daughter, Elsie. Grief stole his confidence, medical bills consumed their savings, and one unfortunate business failure forced him to sell nearly everything they owned. Graham refused to surrender completely because every afternoon he looked into Elsie's hopeful blue eyes and remembered the promise he whispered beside Claire's hospital bed: their daughter would always have a future filled with possibility. Every weekday morning began with sunlight streaming through the small apartment window as Graham packed Elsie's lunch before heading to temporary repair jobs around the county. His hands were rough from years of fixing engines, but he never complained. During lunch breaks he studied old airport blueprints collected from public libraries because he remained fascinated by forgotten airfields. He believed abandoned airports could become centers for aviation training, emergency services, drone logistics, and aircraft restoration. Everyone else dismissed those ideas as impossible fantasies, but Graham quietly filled notebook after notebook with practical plans. Across the city, Preston Holbrook ruled Holbrook Aviation Holdings with enormous confidence. Newspapers celebrated him as a visionary billionaire, yet behind the polished interviews lived a man who valued profit above people. Among his least successful investments sat Ashton Municipal Airport, a forgotten regional airfield purchased years earlier during an ambitious expansion. Environmental rumors, poor planning, and financial losses had destroyed every redevelopment attempt. Maintaining the empty property cost millions every year, and Preston wanted it erased from his balance sheet before shareholders questioned his judgment. When Graham heard that Ashton Airport would be auctioned for almost nothing because no one wanted the liability, he emptied his tiny savings account, sold his old pickup truck, borrowed a little from an elderly mechanic who believed in him, and arrived carrying exactly $1,234. Wealthy investors attended only for amusement. They joked that the airport should become a museum for broken dreams. Preston watched the bidding with quiet satisfaction because he expected nobody to touch the property. Then Graham submitted the only serious offer. Laughter spread through the room, people whispered that desperation had finally defeated common sense. Some reporters even followed Graham outside to photograph the man who had supposedly purchased the worst real estate in the state. Graham ignored every camera. He simply folded the documents carefully into his worn leather folder, thanked the staff with genuine respect, and drove toward the abandoned airport using a borrowed van. Beside him sat Elsie, smiling brighter than the afternoon sun. She looked through the cracked windshield at endless stretches of damaged pavement and whispered that she could already imagine airplanes returning one day. Her faith became the first brick in an empire nobody else could see. The airport looked worse than every photograph. Rust-covered fuel tanks. Broken windows reflected empty skies. Grass reached above Graham's knees in places. Birds nested inside neglected hangars. Yet instead of seeing decay, Graham saw opportunity hidden beneath neglect. Every structure became a puzzle instead of a burden. Every broken machine represented a future repair rather than permanent failure. Without money to hire crews, Graham worked with his own hands from sunrise until late afternoon every single day. Elsie spent weekends collecting loose bolts, sweeping offices, planting flowers near the entrance, and painting encouraging messages on temporary signs. Local residents initially watched with sympathy, believing father and daughter were wasting precious energy. Still, Graham greeted every visitor with kindness, offered free mechanical advice whenever neighbors needed help, and never spoke bitterly about those who mocked him. One afternoon, an elderly retired pilot named Walter Grayson stopped by after noticing the steady progress. Walter had flown rescue missions decades earlier and recognized something rare inside Graham: determination without arrogance. Instead of offering empty compliments, Walter brought retired friends who volunteered to restore equipment. A former electrician repaired damaged wiring. A retired architect examined forgotten blueprints. Local farmers loaned machinery to clear overgrown fields. A vocational school donated surplus tools after hearing Graham explain his dream to train young mechanics who lacked opportunities. The airport slowly transformed into a place where people rediscovered purpose alongside broken buildings. Preston occasionally received progress reports but ignored them. He remained convinced the project would collapse within weeks. Meanwhile, Graham uncovered forgotten records showing the airport possessed an unusually strong runway foundation built decades earlier to military standards. Modern inspections confirmed that although neglected, the core infrastructure remained remarkably solid. What everyone assumed was worthless had simply been abandoned before anyone truly understood its potential. Then another unexpected discovery changed everything. Inside a neglected storage facility, Graham found maintenance records proving the airport already possessed permits allowing specialized cargo operations with only minor updates. Those permits would normally cost millions and require years of approval. Instead of selling the advantage immediately, Graham contacted regional medical organizations, emergency response teams, and humanitarian groups. He proposed transforming Ashton Airport into a daytime logistics center capable of delivering medicine, emergency supplies, and technical equipment to rural communities much faster than traditional transportation. Many organizations politely declined. A few never replied. Only one regional medical charity accepted a meeting. Graham arrived carrying worn notebooks instead of expensive presentations. He explained every detail honestly, including the risks, the unfinished repairs, and the limited budget. His sincerity impressed the board more than polished marketing ever could. They agreed to test a small partnership. The first medical supply aircraft landed on a bright morning surrounded by volunteers cheering from the edge of the runway. Children waved homemade banners while local newspapers quietly covered the event. That single successful operation proved Graham's vision worked. Soon drone companies requested testing space, aircraft restoration businesses rented hangars, emergency service organizations established training programs, technical colleges opened aviation apprenticeships, small manufacturers leased warehouse space. The once forgotten airport evolved into a thriving daytime innovation campus where hundreds of families found stable employment. 6 months after paying $1,234, independent appraisers estimated the property's value in the hundreds of millions. News channels returned to the airport. This time nobody laughed. Reporters who once mocked Graham now asked how he had predicted success. He never claimed extraordinary intelligence. Instead, he simply answered that abandoned places often resemble abandoned people. Sometimes both need someone willing to believe they still have purpose. Those words spread across the country. Preston Holbrook watched every interview from his luxurious office. For the first time in years, success brought him no satisfaction. He replayed the auction in his mind and realized he had judged a man solely by worn clothing and limited money. Graham had purchased more than land. He had purchased an opportunity hidden beneath everyone else's pride. Pressure soon mounted inside Preston's company. Shareholders questioned how such valuable property had been sold so cheaply. Executives blamed one another. Lawyers searched for legal loopholes that might recover the airport, but every contract had been completed properly. Graham had honored every requirement with complete integrity. Faced with embarrassment, Preston drove to Ashton Airport during the middle of a sunny afternoon expecting confrontation. Instead, he found children touring aircraft museums built inside restored hangars, apprentices repairing engines under experienced mentors, veterans teaching aviation safety, and families enjoying community events on grounds once covered with weeds. Everywhere he looked, people smiled with genuine gratitude, near the original terminal, Graham stood helping a teenage apprentice tighten bolts on an aircraft engine. There was no luxury office, no expensive suit, and no security guards surrounding him. Despite becoming extraordinarily wealthy, he still worked with grease on his hands because he believed leadership meant serving first. Preston quietly observed for several minutes before realizing that Graham's greatest achievement was not financial success. It was the community growing around him. For the first time in many years, Preston admitted he had been wrong, that he apologized sincerely for underestimating Graham and confessed that his own obsession with appearances had blinded him to true value. Graham listened patiently without anger. Holding on to resentment would have dishonored everything Claire had taught him about compassion. He accepted the apology, not because the past disappeared, but because forgiveness allowed both men to move forward. That moment changed Preston as deeply as the airport had changed Graham. Instead of competing against Ashton Airport, Preston redirected company resources towards scholarships, technical education, and regional infrastructure partnerships. His corporation gradually shifted from chasing quarterly headlines to investing in long-term community development. Employees noticed the difference. Customers noticed the difference. Even Preston's own family noticed. He smiled more often than before. Meanwhile, Graham fulfilled the promise he had made years earlier beside Claire's hospital bed. Elsie attended one of the nation's finest aviation science academies while continuing to volunteer at the airport every weekend. She insisted every visitor deserved the same kindness her father had once received from strangers who believed in impossible dreams. The airport itself became more than a transportation center. It became a living reminder that failure is sometimes only neglected potential waiting for someone brave enough to see beyond appearances. Tour groups visited not to admire luxury but to witness perseverance. Young entrepreneurs came seeking inspiration instead of shortcuts. Families facing hardship left believing tomorrow could become brighter than today. Before we reach the end of this journey, we would love to hear from you. Please leave a meaningful comment sharing a time when someone believed in you, or tell us whether you think forgiveness is stronger than revenge. Your story might inspire someone else who desperately needs hope today. Years after purchasing a forgotten airport for only $1,234, Graham often stood near the entrance beneath clear afternoon skies watching airplanes rise one after another. Every departure reminded him of the day everyone laughed. Every landing reminded him that faith, hard work, and kindness can carry people farther than pride ever will. Wealth had changed his circumstances, but it never changed his heart. He remained the same devoted father who packed school lunches before sunrise and believed every broken thing deserved another chance. That if this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Always remember that the world's greatest opportunities are often hidden inside the places everyone else has already given up on, and sometimes the smallest investment is not measured in dollars at all, but in courage, compassion, and the decision to keep believing when nobody else does.